Hello, this is Jeff Neville for Selective Imagery. If you'd like to skip ahead and go past my introductory slideshow, it kind of shows you folks what I like to take pictures of. Jump ahead to about the 1 minute and 45-second mark, and that should get you close to where we start the real deal here with the video. Thanks a lot. Have a good day. Welcome to Selective Imagery. Hello everyone, this is Jeff Neville for Selective Imagery. I hope everyone is doing well and having fun getting out there and shooting. The title of this video is Pre-Visualizing Your Photo. Originally I thought I would call it Tips and Tricks to Better Photography or How to Capture Great Images. And I changed my mind on that because, let's face it, I don't have a big ego, and I don't think that every photo that I put on my show is necessarily great. I may like it, but I'm sure there's a percentage that may think it's great. Some may think, oh, I take pictures like that every day, and others may think, boy, some of those pictures really stink. And that's the way it is. So basically, I'm going to share with you, I went back in the archives because there's not a lot to shoot right now. So I went back in the archives and I pulled out some photos that you've never seen before and mixed in some that you probably have seen before in my videos. And I'm just going to share them with you and talk about the photos a little bit and explain why I think the photo is interesting, or what I did to make it interesting, and why I think it's it's an image that you might want to emulate to improve your photography. So we're going to get started. There's a lot of pictures to share with you, so sit back and get a cup of coffee and hopefully you enjoy it. Thanks for watching. Well, surprise, surprise, we start off with a wedding photograph, believe it or not. Now, what makes this interesting and different is I had them do peekaboo around the tree, and it made them relax. It allowed them to have some fun, and you capture that fun in the image, and that's what makes it an interesting image. So everything doesn't have to be static, your standard, okay, the bride and groom together, the bride and groom with the parents, so on and so forth. Is take some time to have the bride and groom do some things that are a little silly and capture them. And those might be the shots that they enjoy looking at the most when all is said and done at the end of the day. Just something to think about. Here we are with a few images of the red morph version of the shriek owl. Now, what makes these great? Well, the subject, the background with the Spanish moss, the lighting. There's not stuff in the background that's interfering with the image. Okay, upcoming you have a female merganser. You got the color in the water, the swirling in the water, and it has food in its mouth. Show up when the light is right. get a nice colorful shot of the cedar waxwing. Go on the beaches, get the sunrise, get something of a foreground element in a picture. And if you're really lucky, you can get some birds flying underneath the rising sun. And you know, sunrises are just really fun to get. You never know what kind of colors you're going to find in the sky. Take a road trip. People love old barns, dilapidated buildings, so on and so forth. And down south, hey, you can't resist an image of a cotton field. That's really cool to look at. Back to birds, capture, you know, a swan doing something a little different. Get the white pelicans as they're landing. Find that unusual pose of a bird, like this great blue heron. Take environmental shots. Don't always just put the bird by itself in the picture. Get what the environment is around it. Get pictures of birds fighting over the same fish. That's always interesting. And like I said, sometimes the natural environment isn't necessarily also natural. Capture that as well. Do some close-up photography. And be very patient and be willing to stand in one place for a long time to be able to capture those hummingbird shots. They come and go. You may see a few of them, they'll take off. You may have to stand there and wait 20 minutes or a half hour for them to come back again. Butterflies require patience as well. I mean, they're always moving from flower to flower. And then look in different types of plants and see what you find. Tree frog, always an interesting subject. And don't be afraid to take vertical shots. People get hung up on always taking horizontal shots and fail to take vertical shots. And then continue to look in the same area and see if you find something else that might surprise you. This is a documentary type photograph. Unfortunately, this is the last 2 minutes of life for this mullet that was dying from oxygen deprivation. You know, capture the sun behind a cattail. Ospreys are always fun. Don't be so scared of the blue skies. I know so many people hate blue skies. Capture things that, well, represent the real world. There's a gator eating a bird. I mean, it's just the way it is. Capture how nature is. I mean, it's not all cute, fuzzy little animals and beautiful birds. You know, you have gators, you know, searching for food, and that's part of the life cycle, and capturing that is important if you're a nature photographer. Try to find a ghost crab on the beach that doesn't dive into the hole before you approach it. Here's some shots from Cadillac Mountain at Acadia National Park in Maine. Beautiful scenery. Capture that in all its glory and all the color. This is off one of the beaches. Capture that foreground element of the beach. And here does two things. You got the wonderful colors, and you also have the logo that says that you're on Cranberry Isle. And then these pictures are from Cranberry Isle when you're walking around, just showing you what life is like on the island. Okay, this is a horse and buggy tour that you could take in the park. And then we move back to take some colorful pictures in the touristy areas of Myrtle Beach. Take some images at night. Now coming up, we have an environmental shot of a great egret that happens to have an eel. And you want to get the reflection. You want to have some color in the water. That's a key thing when taking pictures of birds near the water. Go on a boat excursion. Get some pictures of the birds in the nesting areas. Take a funny picture once in a while, like this hat laying on the grasses in the water. People can use their own imagination. What might have happened here? Use shallow depth of field. The only thing sharp in this picture is that little wren. Also, look for colorful birds. Here's a bluebird on the nice green grass with a spider. Go and don't be afraid to go to botanical gardens and take some pictures. Here's some beautiful water lilies. And don't just take flowers. Take pictures of some of the plants because you just have different patterns of color and textures. Don't be afraid to get close up to show the detail of a flower, of that bud, of that flower. And take a funny shot. It's my friend Tim. You guys know him as Mozman. Came down and visited me and we had a good time. Take shots in your backyard. You never know what you might find. This is a shrike with an insect. Take pictures of the birds gathering nesting material. Like I said, this was on a boat excursion that I took to get these osprey shots. Sometimes you just have to, you got to pay a little money, you got to go on a boat to get some different photographs to mix things up a bit. Try to get them flying out of the trees. This one's, got a fish in its talon and it's, taking its time ripping it apart. And don't forget the little guys. I mean, the swirling colors of the water is great in this image. And I used to take pictures of car races. This is an American Le Mans series from years ago with the Corvette team. Obviously, they didn't win the race. Here we go, back again with some street photography shots. If you visit the Myrtle Beach area, go to Conway, South Carolina, downtown, so that you can get some of these beautiful murals that were painted by native artists down here. I mean, fantastic work, something worth taking pictures of. And take things that have shapes, and shadows. That really, makes this kind of a photo underneath the bridge. Look for reflections in the water. Capture the reflection of that alligator in its environment. And sometimes you get lucky and you get both a barn swallow and a tree swallow that actually stop and sit for like a whole 2 seconds while you try to take the picture. Here's the ugliest duck, a Muscovy duck. No lie, go online, type in ugliest duck in South Carolina. It'll come up with Muscovy duck. And here we go, switching to one of the prettiest birds in South Carolina. Get your bird in flight shots, especially when you get decent light. Yes, there's blue in the sky, but there's also some white fluffy clouds bringing nesting material to the nest. What makes this shot is the light hitting the grackle and bringing out the purple and the color of that bird. And here, you have to have a gator shot once in a while. In with the reeds. And this is like a full spread shot of an osprey looking right at me. And this one, I took because I like the color, and for once I was lucky enough to get a tree swallow that was actually sharp in the image. Very hard for those of us that have tried. Get pictures of images of birds with the food in their mouth, great blue heron. This is a once-in-a-lifetime shot of a bunch of birds in the tree with the spoonbills flying in. I'll never get a shot like that again. And who can resist a cute mink shot? Now you have to walk around and look. I mean, these guys just aren't around for daily photographs. You have to get on your feet and walk and look and walk and look. Red-winged blackbird. Here's some oyster catchers where the light is just starting to hit the top of the oysters that they're walking across. Well, this is a shot that speaks for itself. What makes this shot is the subject. Never rule out taking pictures when you have fog. You might have to wait 3 hours for the fog to break, but you could get some nice shots in the fog. In beach scenes where you're following the leading lines and you have the sandals in the front, that's beautiful. And minimalist photography. You just have a snail and a feather. Here you have a whole bunch of friends. You have anhingas, you have turtles, the lighting is good. Nice, you know, that's what you want to look for. This is just a funny shot. This squirrel and I, the fox squirrel and I, are going to have a WWF moment. You know, try to get your osprey shots with a fish. And it's great when you can get a robin. And look for those colors in the background and try not to have the background blown out if you can help it. Now here's a barred owl that's killing its prey, field mouse. And once again, an eagle shot, and this is not a full-fledged adult yet. It doesn't have the pure white head. Look for moments like this. You have a group of white pelicans, and the one in the front, you can see the outline of a flounder in its mouth. Butterfly shots, try to get color in the background behind it. That is a key thing, is to always look for color. This is one of my favorite shots that I've ever taken. The lighting is perfect on this great egret, and the colors behind it really make it special. Groups of white pelicans are always fun to get, especially you get them with their heads going up and down. And this is a brown pelican that has like a funny pose on a post at a pier. And this shot, does the bird make the shot, or does the color, the reflection of the color in the water make the shot? Ask yourself that question. What makes this shot interesting is the multiple shadows behind the bird. And this is just one of those, you know, loving moments where these cormorants are hugging each other. An osprey that has a fish that you could barely see there at the top of this tree, picking it apart. And look for funny shots. Look, you know, these spoonbills, the orientation that they're in with the reflections in the water, that's what you're looking to get. And if you get that bright early morning color and you're lucky enough to get some birds flying across it, take advantage of that. Always look out for birds feeding. I mean, this anhinga scared the heck out of me. It took a fish that extended its dorsal fin, was hard to swallow. This was more than a half hour before it could eat that fish, and I really thought it was going to choke to death. Look for groups of different birds that are hanging out together. And this is just a fun shot because look down off a pier and you see this blue crab, you know, trying to open up this clam for dinner. In this moment, which looks like chaos, really is all these fish just flying out of the water. It's because there's a gator that's creating that splash. And cormorants can eat fish like no other bird that I've ever seen. They could eat dozens and dozens of birds. And this is a type of shot that makes you think. Talk about pre-visualization. You're going to think that gator got that crab. In reality, it didn't get the crab because it was too full from eating these fish. And when you can get a shot that's a little moody, why not? This was actually during the sunrise, but it was very cloudy in that particular morning. And nothing like a hummingbird whose tongue has decided to just collapse. Strange but interesting. Don't be afraid to just pick out a single bloom of a flower. Once again, sunrise shots. This had an ND filter to smooth out the water a little bit. You can see the people on the top are like very blurry. Capturing the right moment, tracking a bird, following it, getting it when it gets that fish. Everybody tries to get, pictures of bees on flowers, but here the focus is on the bee and the flower is soft. This was shot between two shrubs. This was getting down to the ground to get that shot of the Predominately warbler. Another cormorant with a fish. When you're shooting flower pictures, try to get you focus on a flower, shallow depth of field, get those colors in the background to blur and just give you a nice pop. If you got white flowers, if you can get a background dark or make it darker in post, that makes that white really pop. So painted bunting. Nice background, obviously shot close to wide open. You're always trying to get those action shots. Here's Dad dropping the fish off in the nest for Mom and the baby. Here's a pileated woodpecker in the forest. There are multiple babies in that hole, and it has grubs in its mouth to feed the young. Red-tailed hawk. Always look around. I mean, you never know. You always have to be turning your head, looking around, and you just spot things. But just don't stand somewhere and think, oh, something's just going to happen. This particular bird you hardly ever see. The lighting on this, yes, blue in the sky, but the lighting on this bird is like as good as you're going to get. And this turtle sure does look proud with its head up. Okay, so coming up, we're going to have some baby great horned owl pictures, and you try to get them when they're doing something interesting like yawning, but we can be honest and say that you're going to take way too many pictures of this little fella just because it's so cute, and you're going to not want to delete any of them even though they all look the same. That's just how it goes. This mute swan just looks so peaceful in the water in the early morning. And what makes this picture isn't really the duck, it's the ripples and the color in the water. Here it's just interesting with this brown pelican because the wingtip is basically touching the water, and this is an environmental photo of a great blue heron with the Spanish moss all around it. And these are scenes that, I mean, you got to walk around and look for this. Baby duckling swimming away. I mean, no one can resist ducklings, so when you have the opportunity, and this is in my backyard, so I can't complain that I can get something like this in my backyard. And this is a minimalist photo. This is the male and female mallard taken off. And this is like a Where's Waldo picture, so you have to see if you can find the green lizard amongst all these green blades of grass. And, you know, with flowers and stuff, you fool around with your focusing and your depth of field, and You know, you get up early in the morning where you get the real dewdrops on the flowers, not the fake ones that you try to spray on with your water bottle. And then something as simple as a pine tree, when you look at it closer, you think it's got corn on the cob growing off of it. And sometimes you do focus on the bird. It's not much that you're showing in that image other than the bird. And in this case coming up, you have two cormorants, and they look like they're doing a dance routine. You know, they're moving in sync, and they have their wings in the same position. And always look up in the sky. Look for those groups of birds to fly around that you could possibly capture. And man's best friend, hey, nothing wrong with that, man. But try to find something colorful to make the image pop a little bit. And as I keep saying, look around you all the time. This was a freak shot that this gator got trapped from a vine. My kids hate clowns, especially my younger one, so I had to take this picture. This was on top of a trash can at a fair. And this is an image within an image, you know, fill flash so you could see the scribing on the wood, and you're getting the image through that covered bridge. And this is just your typical vacation photo, and taken a million times, but it flows nice. This is just something I made up. I mean, I found these little buds and I kind of laid them all together and tried to make it look like a leaf. In Vermont, I think this was in Vermont, it was raining, so I get that nice saturation of color because all that wood is wet. And you have to end the slideshow with a scary picture, so hopefully you didn't jump out of your seat. So we'll finish this up by just talking about some key things. Don't be afraid to shoot vertical. Use shallow depth of field whenever you can when you're doing like portraits of birds, and try to position yourself so you have some nice color in the background that's just going to show up as a blur. That's really going to make your image. If you got birds swimming in the water, you're going to have parts of that water that are either just black or gray looking. You're going to have other parts where the sun's hitting the trees in the background and that reflection is in the water. Try to take the picture of the birds when they're in that reflection, and where it looks good and you have that extra color. Take some environmental photos where it's almost like a landscape that just happens to have a bird in it, or just happens to have, you know, a bison in it or whatever, where the animal or the bird complements the photo but doesn't necessarily take over the photo. Lighting is important, but utilizing shadows is also important. Sometimes, especially if you're taking pictures of buildings, or the picture I took under the bridge, the elements from the shadow is just as important as the light that you get. So you have to play a game between the shadows and the highlights. If you're doing landscape photography, obviously many a times you want foreground, the background tack sharp throughout the whole thing. So there's different methods for doing that, and I don't want this video to be 2 hours long, but you know, some people just say, well, you know, go focus a third of the way in on your image, shoot at f/16 or higher, and you'll usually be sharp front to back. Another approach is decide where you want your plane of focus to start. If it's 20 feet away, double it. Focus at 40 feet away, and once again, stop down, f/16, f/22, whatever, and you will have everything front to back sharp. So pictures of the creatures feeding and eating are always interesting, but don't forget portrait photography. Everybody doesn't want to see an animal or a bird always having something in their mouth that they're munching on. It's good to have a mix of photos in your portfolio. Get some backlit subjects, where if you have a white bird and you get the outline of the bird is nice and bright white. I mean, it's really a nice look. So play with the light and don't stand in one position. Take the picture from different angles. Like I said, the difference between having a nice color in the background and not having much color in the background could be a matter of you walking 5 feet to the left or 5 feet to the right. So use your feet, move around, frame the subject differently, take multiple angles, multiple positions. Once in a while, shoot vertical so everything isn't the same. And take group shots, try to get groups of birds in flight. And it's fun to try to get birds and intentionally slow the shutter speed down so some of the birds are sharp and some of the birds are not sharp when they're flying above the water, and you can get reflections of the bird in the water as well. Having done a handful of weddings in my day, like I said, look for human interest photos. Most of the time, a professional wedding photographer that has a second shooter, the pro's focusing on the bride and groom, and the second shooter is looking for those pictures of the flower girl or the ring bearer blowing bubbles. Sometimes, people have little kits or toys that the kids can play with to keep them occupied or let them blow bubbles and stuff like that. So capture those moments is always a neat thing to add to your wedding portfolio shots, or for that person's wedding. They'll appreciate pictures like that. Use different depth of field, use different f-stop settings. At times, if you're taking a portrait of people that have a flowered shrub behind them, move them a little bit away from the flowered shrub. Use a shallow depth of field so that the color, you just have the greens and whatever color the flower is just kind of blends in with the background, and you're focusing it on the person. But then move them closer to the shrubs and stop down the lens a little bit so the flowers and them are in focus, and take it different ways and let them decide which they like better, and you'll find out they'll probably want both. So that's it. I mean, I could talk forever. I feel like I talked forever doing this video. Enjoy life, capture some of it. As I said, get out and shoot. I hope you liked the video. Please give me a thumbs up and comment, and subscribe if you hadn't. Subscribing to the channel does not cost you any money. It doesn't mean you have to come back every week, but it's appreciated. I mean, it makes me feel like the channel's growing a little at a time, that more people are seeing the channel, more people are appreciating what I do. So take care, God bless, until next time, have a good one.